Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and today we're going to be talking about Tron. And in yesterday's video, I was also talking about Tron and specifically the character of Yori, played by Cindy Morgan. So, for anyone who has not actually seen the first two Tron movies, I'm going to do a super brief recap so that everybody's caught up to speed. But also, I'm going to kind of emphasize certain parts of the movie that I think are a little more relevant than what I want to talk about today. So, the original Tron movie from 1982 starred Jeff Bridges as Kevin Flynn. He also in that movie played a second role, which was a program Flynn made called Clue. And while they kill the original Clue off early in the movie, Clue's a really big deal in the second movie where he's actually the main villain. Um, Bruce Boxleiter played two characters in the first Tron movie. One was Alan Bradley, who was a human being in the real world, who wrote a program who, in the computer world, which they call the grid, is called Tron. So, of course, the movie is named after him. And then the third major character, played by Cindy Morgan, was the human she played was Dr. Lora Baines. And then the program that she played was called Yori. And so the setup is that Kevin Flynn invented a video game called Space Paranoids. And there's this company called Encom, and they've kind of screwed him over, and nobody knows that he's the one who actually made it. And so he asks his ex-girlfriend, who I don't know what happened, why they're not together anymore, but he somehow blew it in real life with the Cindy Morgan character. So at any rate, she is now with this guy named Alan Bradley who works for Encom, and the three of them break into Encom one night, and Flynn tries to get information off of their computers that proves that he invented space paranoids. And Encom has been working on this gadget, and it digitizes Flynn, and he is transported to the grid where he has a bunch of adventures in the computer world, and he meets the other characters that I mentioned, Tron and Yori. And so, according to Cindy Morgan herself, Tron, Yori, and Flynn are supposed to be in a love triangle, kind of like Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Wolverine in a way, where, Jean has to decide which man does she really love, that kind of thing. It was supposed to be the same deal with Yori. And there were deleted scenes about this where they filmed them that made it more clear what was going on romantically between these characters. And unfortunately, during the editing process, we lost that. So at the end of the movie, Flynn leaves the grid by himself, has the evidence he needs. He becomes the CEO of the company or whatever, happy ending, right? So then we get to Tron Legacy. And what we find out throughout the course of that movie, as told through flashbacks, is that Kevin Flynn was going back to the grid all the time. Like every night, he would leave and go do stuff on the grid. And sometimes that's where he would spend the night. And at some point, he has a kid named Sam. Um, and we don't know anything about Sam's mom. The movie leaves that out completely. And so then at the start of the movie, Sam has been raised by his grandparents. His parents Well, again, we know nothing about the mom, but the dad, Kevin Flynn, went missing at some point, hasn't been seen for years. And so Sam is, in my humble opinion, shockingly athletic. He can jump off of buildings and do stuff with parachutes, and he can zig and zag in and out of traffic really fast when he rides a motorcycle. And so, at any rate, he one night also he goes to his dad's arcade. He finds the gadget that can digitize you. That's what happens to him. He ends up on the grid and he has a bunch of adventures. He meets a girl named Quara, played by Olivia Wilde, and they hook up, and it's kind of a love story. And we run into the old Tron character, and he has been corrupted by the new Clue. And at any rate, they beat the bad guys. At the very end of the movie, Tron becomes good again. And then Sam and Quara leave the grid to go back to real life, where then Sam assumes control of the company. So we have a lot of parallels to the first movie, right? I mean, just going there and coming back is a parallel. Assuming control of the company is a parallel, so on and so forth. At any rate, though, so so when I saw this, I it's kind of a long story, but I was friends with Cindy Morgan in real life, and I wrote to her on Facebook, and I asked her if she was Sam's mom. And she said, "What are you talking about? Dr. Baines married Alan Bradley. And by the way, they actually filmed kind of a promo for the movie with her and Bruce Boxleiter together. And um, so it's like canon that those two characters got married." And she's like, "So I can't be Sam's mom." And I said, "No, no, no, you misunderstand my question. My question is Yori Sam's mom?" And Cindy was like, "Well, how would that even work?" And I said, "Well, I mean, in the first movie, for instance, we see that programs drink because there's this sequence where they find, I don't know if it's supposed to be like the grid's version of like a freshwater stream, or it's like something like that, where they're like in the grid wilderness and they find what seems to be water and they're like drinking it. And I said, but in my mind, it raises questions, because obviously, like if a human being drinks some sort of liquid, they need to later excrete this, right? They need to use the restroom. So, do programs use the restroom? And the movie doesn't tell us, but um, there's just a million questions along these lines. And so I said, for instance, do programs reproduce the way human beings reproduce? And Cindy really surprised me. She said there was a scene that they filmed for the first movie that they did not use. And apparently, in this scene, first of all, they go to a red light district, and there are programs who are prostitutes. And I was surprised by that. And and then there's another scene, and I don't know if it's supposed to be in that same part of the grid or a whole different part or what. But at some point, there was a scene they filmed where they go to a bedroom that, again, it's in the computer world. And Tron and Yori go into the bedroom, and then Yori takes her helmet off, and let her long blonde hair shows for the first time. And then she somehow turns what she's wearing into like a see-through silk, lingerie kind of a thing. And there's some sort of a tasteful love scene then between her and Tron. And it's kind of implied, well, obviously they weren't going to go hardcore with it or whatever. But so they filmed all that. And my understanding is they even finished the special effects for it and all that. And then when Disney saw it, They flipped out because, mind you, this is 1982, right? This is old school Disney, and they wanted to keep everything G-rated. A lot of listeners won't be familiar, but Disney was making these movies in the 1970s, like The Shaggy Dog and stuff like that. And which, by the way, in 1987, they made The Return of the Shaggy Dog, and Cindy Morgan was in that too. But at any rate, they they were making a different kind of movie back then, than they do now. And so they cut the love scene. But then the other reason that they cut that love scene was they wanted it to be ambiguous. They didn't want to say, you know what, Yori chooses Tron. And they wanted you to kind of wonder if maybe she liked Flynn. And according to Cindy Morgan, when the director was telling her how to act out scenes with Flynn, she was supposed to look at him lovingly. She was supposed to be attracted to him. She's curious about his world. She's impressed that he made her world, you know what I mean? Um, all that stuff. So that's all very interesting. And so I say to her, okay, my take on it as a viewer, having not known any of that stuff, was I thought that part of the setup is that because Kevin Flynn did not get the girl in real life, he's got a second chance, and that's part of what the movie is about. And that he does get the girl, hopefully, in the grid, and that she is Sam's mom. And now let's go back to what we were talking about earlier with Sam. He can zig and zag in and out of traffic really, really well, like he's riding a light cycle, right? Maybe he's half programmed. And maybe that's why he's acting like a video game character. He's jumping off of buildings. He's doing all of this extraordinary physical stuff, And he's obviously he still has his limitations, and I think that's his human side. But it really, if you look at how his dad functioned half as well as Sam does physically. So it just makes me wonder. Um, so she really liked the idea of that. And so much so, in some of the interviews after we had that conversation, she was actually bringing it up in old interviews. And Disney was telling her, I can't remember if I said this already or not. Um, they were going to let her be in Tron Legacy, and whoever it was she spoke to at Disney, and this is her words, not mine, said she was too fat for film, which I think is an awful thing to say, right? But they told her if she lost a bunch of weight, then she could be in Tron 3. And back then they were talking about filming that in like 2012 or 2013 or something like that. And she had gained weight over the years. I think she was always beautiful, but she had gained weight. And so she went to the gym and she was like killing herself. No, geez, that's the wrong wording to use. I didn't mean it that way. I'm sorry. But she was having a miserable time, right? Is what I meant. And she lost a bunch of weight, and she looked fantastic. And she was ready for filming. When they were talking about filming, and then they were like, "Oh, you know what? We scrapped the movie. It's not happening after all." And I felt bad for her having gone through all of that then. Um, but yeah, so she was talking at the time about she did think Yori was Sam's mom, and she was pushing for that. And there were people at Disney who were receptive to that idea, where they were talking about maybe that being the case. And then for some reason, I saw on a wiki or something at some point, they invented some new character, and then she was going to be Sam's mom, and they were going to have Sam be totally human, and so on and so forth, which I thought was a bummer because at the end of Tron Legacy, part of the plot is the dad wants the son to get with Korra because he sees Korra as um a miracle. They call her a miracle, where she's not a program, she's not made. she happened or whatever, on her own, I think is how they put it. But at any rate, I think that Kevin Flynn sees the ISO race as this beautiful thing. I think that he wants he wants to see these two worlds come together. And so a child would be like the physical manifestation of that idea, right? But then if you say, you know what, Sam himself is not just one race, um he's got a human side and a program side, then everything is coming together. So in my mind, that is still an extension of that same plot. And Cindy had kind of embraced that idea, I think. Um, so in our game, well, so we've had multiple celebrities playing the game. Um, I'm a big Transformers fan, and so I'd reached out to Corey Burton, who had been on the Transformers show. He was one of the voice actors. And a character he also played he was on Superman, the animated series, as Brainiac. So we got him to play Brainiac in our role-playing game. And then I met John Wesley Shipp at a convention, and then he played the Flash. And I ran into Dean Cain at that same convention a year later, and he played Superman. Um, so I reached out to Cindy Morgan, and so her contribution to our game was she played Yori, but she wanted to sort of do some stuff we haven't talked about thus far. Cindy wanted Yori to be in the real world, first of all. And I said, sure, cool, done. So when we did our version of Tron, which was in yesterday's video, um, Flynn doesn't come to the real world by himself. Yori comes with him. And which, by the way, I can't remember if I already said this or not, but one of my ideas for why Flynn had been going to the grid every night was to be with the woman he loves, right? And I don't know if I mentioned that. But so then in Cindy's version, which is different, it would be Yori is um here in the real world, and that they're a family, and whether or not Sam is their kid, maybe the kid has a different name or something, if we want to care about that thing from the wiki where they give Sam's mom a last name. I'm kind of the opinion that something's not continuity unless you see it on the screen itself. But at any rate, so Cindy wanted to be with Flynn. She wanted him to have kids. She, she'd be a mother and all that stuff. Another thing she brought to the table, though, that I thought was very interesting is, and like, how do I want to explain this briefly? Cindy herself had a really hard life. And so I think that when she was thinking about Lora Baines, she had decided Laura had also had a really hard life. And Cindy thought of Yori as having certain qualities that Cindy had when she was younger and maybe kind of naive, right? So if Laura represents kind of an older, jaded character, and Yori is like a younger, innocent, naive character, her idea was she wanted them to meet, and she said, for instance, in the second movie, Flynn meets Clue, but she thought everybody should meet the other character they play, basically, so that Tron meets Alan Bradley face to face finally, that she thought that needed to be a scene. Um, but in her mind, those two characters are just two halves of one whole. And it's almost like this yin yang thing, where then when the characters meet and interact and work through things, they both meet in the middle until both of them are kind of like a well-balanced, well-rounded, healthy uh character, right? And so she thought that, for instance, Laura would help Yori. I don't want to say grow up, but you know what I mean. Like, there'd be a certain level of maturation take place. But then the opposite would also happen, where then Yori would help Laura not be so like jaded and stuff like that, and bring her back to where she's kind of like centered. And she thought everybody should kind of be good for everybody else. And um obviously the Flynn Clue thing is a pretty rocky road in that department, but that's kind of beyond the scope of this video. So we established that in the game, that our Yori meets, knows, is friends with our version of Laura, Bradley. And then the other thing she wanted was to see Yori like fighting crime in real life, basically, since it's a superhero game. So she wanted her to have a light cycle in the real world that she can zip around on. She wanted to be able to throw the frisbee thing, kind of like Captain America does, with his shield, and take out criminals and stuff like that. So we established all that. In our game world, Yori is like a crime fighter in real life. Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess that's about it for what we did with her in game. So then there's the out of game thing. And I said in yesterday's video that I would explain how Cindy and I became friends. Um, so in very early 2010, I don't know if this would have been like February. I'm not sure like on the exact date, but it was early 2010, and I'm a very forgetful person. And something I used to do all the time is I would forget to take out the trash. And the only reason I don't forget that now is because we live in the middle of nowhere now, and they don't have trash service out here. But at any rate, so I'd always forget to take out the trash on Monday morning or whatever. And so on this particular Monday, I hear the garbage truck coming from down the street, and it makes this beeping sound. And so I woke up and I was like, crap, and I forgot again. So I get dressed and hurry around, and I grab everything that needs to go out. And as I run outside, what I have completely overlooked is the fact that everything is icy. So I slip and I crack my head, and I go to the ER, and they scan my head, which is like standard procedure, and they find an inoperable brain tumor, which I still have, by the way, can't be removed. The doctor said, quote unquote, you could not pick a worse place to have this. It's in the very, very center of the brain. So they got to go through half the brain, no matter what angle they'd go in at, and nobody wants to accept the liability. So they gave me 6 months to live. And I remember they told me on a Friday, and I just sat around in shock for like a long time. And then that passed, and I decided to go online. And because part of it was I decided to say goodbye basically to everybody I knew, tell everybody what was going on, so on and so forth. And at any rate, the trailer, the very first thing I saw online in that moment was the trailer to Tron Legacy. I'd never seen the trailer before. And I remember thinking to myself, that looks really cool. I'd really like to go see that movie. And then my secondary thought was, oh, I can't. It's more than 6 months away. So I won't be here for that. And that was a weird feeling. And I think that was the moment it felt real. Like I think that was the moment I sort of like on some level everybody knows they're mortal, right? But in another way, a lot of people, I think, don't really know it until they're in a situation like that. Like, there's this realization that's kinda hard to describe. So that watching that Tron trailer is what made me arrive at that, and then I went through the course of this weekend, I went through all the stages of grief, so that by the time Monday rolled around, I was at peace. And everybody's different, everybody does that at different speeds and stuff like that, but I just didn't care about anything, like, on Monday. I just felt so removed from everything. And I remember going on Facebook and, like, seeing people fighting and stuff like that, and I just felt like, um, people should just get along and be gentle and peaceful and kind to each other and stuff like that. And but point being, it was around that time that because of the trailer to Tron Legacy, I started sending out friend requests to kind of everybody associated with the Tron franchise. And so I sent one to Cindy Morgan, and she accepted it. And how do I want to put this? Like, I I wouldn't tell people what was going on with my brain tumor because I wanted special attention or anything of that nature. You know what I mean? Like, I had no ulterior motives. I was just honest and open is all. But and again, this kind of sounds bad, especially now that I'm still here. It sounds kind of like dishonest or something. I didn't mean it that way, though. I had no idea then I'd still be here now. But I did kind of get special attention from celebrities, right? It was almost like a make a wish kind of a vibe in a way. Like, they would they would hear what I was going through, and instead of, like, blowing me off or whatever, like, I think, you know what I mean? How it usually goes, they would spend a little more time talking to me, and they'd get to know me and stuff, and then I ended up with a handful of people, we became friends, and not just Tron related stuff, but everything, like with Transformers and the Transformers fandom, I made, friends with a lot of the people that worked on the show back in the '80s and stuff like that. Well, so getting back on topic, so me and Cindy became friends, and she is probably best remembered as Lacey from Caddyshack. And the thing is, and you'll have to forgive me because again, the brain tumor makes me forget details a little bit. It was either that her famous nude scene was not in the script, and on the day, like basically when it came time to film it, they just sprung it on her kind of last minute, or it was in the script, and she said she was gonna pass on the movie because of it, and they told her, "Well, we'll just skip the scene then, we just won't film the scene," and then she accepted it. And then they sprung it on her at the last minute. I can't remember which way it is, but it was something along those lines, right? Where she didn't think she had to do it, and then suddenly she did have to do it. So she said she wouldn't, and someone took her aside, this is in her words, and said, "If you don't do this, you'll never work in this town again." So I can't remember if, again, I'm fuzzy on this part of it, but I can't remember if she said she kind of was like a quiet church girl type, and she called somebody at home, and I can't remember if it was like a pastor or who it was. She called somebody at the time and was talking to him about it, and she really did not want to do this thing is the point, right? And so finally she's like, "Okay, well, maybe I'll do it. Maybe it'll be tasteful. Maybe it'll be okay, blah, blah, blah." And then she asked him, she goes, "Well, can we have a female camera operator that day instead of a male?" And they said, "Yeah, of course. We'll have a female cameraman or whatever you call them, um, photographer or whatever, will it'll be like the other whoever else is in the scene, the director, camera, and that'll be it. Bare minimum stuff. And she's like, okay. So she, of course, agrees to do it because I think a lot of people have seen that scene and know it exists. But when she showed up to film it, everybody was there. And it was people who didn't even have a scene to do that day, people who should be at home showed up at work that day to look at her naked. She felt really uncomfortable and so she really hated that whole experience. And then after the scene, after they were done filming the scene, she went to her trailer and cried for hours. And so she wasn't happy about all that, right? And again, I'm just passing along what she told me. At any rate, so then, Family Guy did a thing about the Lacey character, and it's everywhere, right? It's part of pop culture. And so she would have all these guys writing her on Facebook all the time talking about that scene, and they sometimes get pretty graphic about what they were doing while they watched that scene on VHS or whatever, guys talking about pleasuring themselves and stuff and writing her to tell her. And so one day that happened. It was on Facebook. It was very public. And somebody like tagged her in a picture or something of the Lacey character, and the guy was like, "Oh yeah, I was doing this and da 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 da." And I remember saying something to the guy. And again, I was in this weird headspace because I thought I was dying. And um like I said, I was like very peaceful and stuff. And um but at any rate, like I reached out to this guy and I said, "Hey, do you think she enjoys hearing that? Like, or do you think maybe that would be uncomfortable to hear?" And so she liked my comment and stuff, to kind of signal to this guy, like, yeah, like maybe shut up. And at any rate, then she reached out to me. And I think that was the moment we became friends, like real friends, I mean, is she reached out to me through Facebook's, I don't know if you call it private message, direct message, whatever, you get the idea. She sent me a message and we got to talking. We never quit talking. And that's when I told her about the game and all that. And that's when she said what she wanted Yori doing in the game, which I already mentioned, fighting crime, married to Flynn, all that jazz. But yeah, we were real friends. And I can't say that about very many celebrities at all, actually. A lot of them I would maybe call like an acquaintance or something like that. It's super rare for me to think of someone as an actual friend. And I have had a few. And unfortunately, I almost feel like I'm some kind of a curse or something because a lot of them have passed away. Granted, they're people I liked when I was a kid, and I'm about 50 now. So, that means that if they were an adult when I was little and now I'm 50, then they're passing away of natural causes and stuff. But you get the idea. But she never said she was sick or anything. Um, I was friends with her on Facebook for a long time. I remember she said something about she had a roommate. She lived in Florida by a golf course because they were always bugging her about Caddyshack stuff, and it brought up all those bad memories I mentioned. And at any rate, she had a roommate, and I remember her commenting, saying something about the the roommate was going home for the holidays. She was going to go home for Thanksgiving and she was going to stay through New Year's. And I don't know if it was like the roommate thought if she wasn't going to be in the apartment in December, she didn't want to pay her half of the December rent or something like that. Again, I'm forgetful. But I remember Cindy posting about that on Facebook, and she was kind of upset about it. And then that was the Christmas that my brother-in-law, Scott, like a lot went down with him. He had like a mental breakdown and he ended up being homeless for a while. And it's a pretty long story, but like, so my whole family was thinking about that, right? That was where my attention was. And I don't think I like said like Merry Christmas or anything to Cindy that Christmas, which I regret. I feel really bad about that now. Um, because she was alone. I don't know what the deal was, why she didn't have anybody at all, you know. Um, and then I don't know if it was a week into January or 2 weeks into January or what, but I remember reading on some kind of heartless website. The headline was Caddyshack star found dead. She would not like that. You know what I mean? The Caddyshack part of it. That was a hard way to find out. And hmm, I miss her, man. She was a real friend. She was such a nice person. She was ridiculously nice. Um, and even I can't watch Tron now, without thinking about her. Um, but yeah, I'm kind of derailing because I'm sad, honestly. What else did I want to say? I don't know. She was super nice though. Um, yeah, I had no idea there was anything wrong with her. Whatever did happen, I still to this day I don't know the official cause of death, but whatever happened to her, she must have needed to go to the emergency room or something, and there was nobody there to do it. Um, yeah, I don't know. She Her favorite thing she ever did was Matlock. I have never seen an episode of Matlock. On my end, um, and I'm not trying to compete with anybody. It's not a competition, but like I said earlier, Cindy had a really hard life. I have not had a fantastic life either. And so when it comes to fiction, I tend to I tend to watch stuff that is an escape from life, escapism, far-fetched stuff that's really out there is kind of like what I like. Um, I don't like TV shows that remind me of life, you know. And so I don't watch shows about like doctors or police officers or, anything like that. And so, or lawyers. So that's why I've never seen Matlock. But I remember her talking about that fondly, that was her favorite thing she ever did, I think. And she was saying how nice everybody was to her. I think, unfortunately, I think that because she was a 10, you know, and so I think that attracted a lot of bad behavior from a lot of the men in her life. And and that's what she liked about doing Matlock, was she didn't get treated that way. So she liked that they treated her well. I think that's why she liked me, was because I treated her well, you know. And she even told me she didn't know many people like that. So that's a tragedy. And with the character in the game, I remember she was talking about she wanted Yori to be like uh, a role model for little girls and a role model for women. And I think that's where that was coming from, was kind of all the bad experiences she had. She wanted Yori to somehow fight that kind of thing. Um, yeah, that's it. I sorry, I I didn't mean to kind of be in this headspace here at the end of the video. I just, yeah, I kind of shut down in a way. But she was great. She was really great. I miss her. Um, I guess the good news is we decided Yori doesn't age. Yori doesn't get sick. You know what I mean? Yori will live forever. So that's cool. Um, if you guys have any memories of Cindy Morgan that you want to put in the comment section, I'd be into that. That'd be pretty cool. Um, and as always, the rigmarole. I already say it. Always say at the end of every video, um, do the stuff. If you hit like, that helps us out. Um, a lot of people tell me they like the videos, but they don't actually hit the like button. And the reason I mention it ad nauseum is because when you do hit the like button, more people become aware of my channel's existence. And my goal on my end is just to share my, you know, thoughts and stuff with as many people as possible. So that helps me out. Subscribing to the channel is good. Um, check to see if you are still subscribed, because that is something YouTube does. I've had multiple people now tell me YouTube unsubscribed them and that they had to resubscribe to me again. So you should always take a quick look and make sure that uh, that box has been checked. You know, what am I leaving out? Notifications. Ring the bell so you know when we upload more stuff. I think that's about it. So from everybody here on my end of things, we wish you guys the best as always. Hope you have a good one, and we will catch you in the next video.